Under the black sky of a quiet Arizona desert, the night was calm, only the sound of a soft wind moving across the sand. But then, the darkness tore open with a blinding white flash that lit up the horizon like a second sun. The ground shook under. The sudden roar and every living thing in the area froze in shock as a strange humming rolled through the air. It was not the sound of a meteor. It was deeper, layered, almost alive. The flash became a streak falling fast toward the desert floor, burning, bright, until it vanished behind a distant ridge. A few seconds later, a blast of light rose from that spot, sending up a shimmering wave of heat and a strange smell like hot metal mixed with rain. Ethan Cole, a young mechanic working late in his small garage, looked up from under the hood of an old truck he was fixing. His tools rattled from the vibration. He had never seen the sky behave like that in his 23 years. Without thinking, he wiped the grease from his hands, grabbed his flashlight, and jumped into his pickup. His mind raced as he drove toward the ridge, his headlights cutting through the dust clouds. He was not the only one curious. Several cars and trucks were already parked in the open field, their drivers standing frozen. Staring ahead at a shallow crater in the ground. In the middle of it lay something not from this world. A sleek, dark shape, half buried its surface, shimmering faintly. Even though there was no light touching it, steam rose in thin, twisting lines, and a low, constant hum vibrated in Ethan's chest like it was calling to him. People whispered it was a drone, a secret weapon, a piece of a satellite. But then the shape shifted. A hatch slid open with a hiss of steam, and a small figure stumbled out. Everyone stepped back in fear. It was a girl, no more than 16 or 17, her skin glowing faint blue under the moon, her silver-white hair falling over her face. Her eyes, when she lifted them, flashed like lightning. She looked around, trembling, breathing fast like a cornered animal. The crowd muttered words like alien dangerous monster. Someone called out that she should be restrained before she attacks. Ethan saw her legs weaken and her knees buckle without thinking. He stepped forward, catching her before she hit the ground. Her skin felt cool and almost electric under his hands. She looked at him, confused, whispering something in a language he had never heard. Then her gaze snapped past him to the dark horizon. Ethan turned and saw lights fast moving, silent and too steady to be helicopters. They were coming straight toward the crater, some kind of drones with red scanning beams sweeping across the ground. The crowd panicked, scattering toward their vehicles, but Ethan stayed, frozen. The girl's small hands clutching his shirt. She whispered again, this time in broken English. "Hide me, please." Ethan's heart pounded. He didn't understand why, but something in her voice, something in the way she looked at him, made him nod. Without a word, he lifted her into his arms and ran toward his truck. The red beams passed over him once, twice. Then he was inside, engine roaring as he sped away toward his garage behind him. The strange craft was being surrounded by shadowy figures. Stepping out of the hovering drones, they moved with precise mechanical grace, not human. Ethan could feel his own breath shaking as he pulled into his garage, slamming the doors shut. He set the girl down on a workbench. She sat silently, her glowing eyes scanning every corner of the room as if expecting something to break in. Any second, Ethan started to speak but stopped when he heard it. A voice from somewhere inside the garage, deep, cold, and inhuman human. "You have just broken your own worlds." Laws. Ethan froze his hand halfway to the toolbox. The words had no source, no mouth speaking them yet. They echoed inside the air and inside his mind. The alien girl looked at him, her expression tense, almost warning him not to answer. But his instincts pushed through and he called out, asking who was there. The voice came again, colder, sharper. "You have taken property of the Empire. Return her now or suffer consequences." Ethan glanced at the girl property. The word made his chest tighten. She shook, her head slowly, as if to say, "Don't do it," then whispered, "I am Zira." She said the name carefully, like it was something she had not spoken in a long time. Her voice was soft, but carried an edge that made Ethan's skin prickle. I am not their property. I escaped. I ran. Because they want to use me for something. You can't imagine Ethan was trying to make sense of her glowing skin, her strange eyes, her words. When the garage light flickered twice, he looked up to see thin lines of red light crawling. Across the windows, drones scanning the building. Zira's breathing quickened her hand, moving instinctively to her left forearm, where a faint metallic patch gleamed beneath her skin. She pressed it, and a tiny pulse of light rippled out like a heartbeat. The voice in the air spoke again. Your location is compromised. Return the subject or be destroyed. Ethan's mind was spinning subject empire escape. None of this made sense, and yet the fear in her eyes was real. He asked her why they wanted her. Zira hesitated, then told him a truth that made his mouth go dry. She was not just an alien. She was a genetic key to an ancient weapon, one so powerful it could erase an entire planet. With a single command, her creators had built her for that one. Purpose to obey and to destroy, she had been trained, tested, controlled. But in her final trial, she refused to fire the weapon and escaped. They chased her across the stars until she crashed here on Earth. Ethan stepped back, trying to wrap his mind around the idea of a living weapon that looked like a fragile teenage girl, but Zira's voice didn't waver. She told him that if the Empire caught her, they would use her to force every world to kneel. They would burn those who resisted Ethan. Asked why she came to Earth. She said she didn't choose it. Her ship had been hit during her escape, and she crashed in the nearest habitable world. He didn't know whether to believe her, but before he could think further, the metallic patch on. Her arm began to beep in a slow, steady rhythm. Her eyes widened. She said it was a tracker. The Empire would now know her exact position within minutes. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled. Ethan caught her again, and she told him every time she used her power. It drained her life little by little. If she used too much, she would die without another word. Ethan moved to the back of the garage, opening a hidden trapdoor beneath an old workbench leading to a storage pit from his late father's. Days as a survivalist, he helped Zira down into the narrow space just as the sound of engines grew outside, deep humming that made the walls vibrate. The red lights flashed through the cracks in the garage door, then a heavy metallic knock rattled. The frame returned the subject now. The voice commanded Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he stayed, crouched beside Zira. The sound of footsteps moved around the garage, slow, deliberate. The kind of walk that said the owner of the feet wasn't worried about being attacked. A small clicking noise followed by the smell of burning metal told Ethan they were cutting through the lock. He pulled a heavy tarp over Zira, whispering for her not to move. The lock snapped with a sharp pop, and the garage Doctor groaned open. Ethan could only see black boots and thin metallic legs stepping inside, scanning beams slicing across the walls, shelves and workbenches. One beam swept dangerously close to the trapdoor, stopping for a second. Ethan's heart hammered. So loud he was sure they could hear it. But then the beam moved on. The voice came again. One final warning. Human, your defiance will be remembered and punished. The boots turned, the metallic footsteps fading until the engines started again and lifted. Away, Ethan didn't move for another full minute when he finally pulled the tarp away. Zira was looking at him with something new in her eyes. Not fear, not suspicion, but a quiet question. Why are you helping me? Ethan had no answer. He only knew that. When he saw her collapse in that crater, something in him refused to walk away. He told her they needed to leave now, because next time the Empire came, they wouldn't just knock. Zira nodded weakly, but as they climbed out of the pit, a sharp pulse of light burst from the metallic patch on her arm, and the beeping grew faster. She looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. They are already on their way. The night outside the garage was no longer quiet. The air shook with the deep pulse of engines that did not belong to anything built on Earth. Ethan could feel the vibrations in his ribs, the sound growing louder every second. Zira's eyes glowed, faintly brighter in the dark as she glanced toward the horizon, her voice tight. They found me faster than I thought. Ethan didn't waste time. He grabbed a duffel bag from under the workbench, stuffing it with a flashlight, bottled water, a crowbar, and the old revolver his father had left him. The distant lights became visible, a swarm of sharp silver shapes, moving fast and low, their surfaces rippling like liquid metal, each one leaving a faint trail of sparks in the night sky. These weren't human aircraft. They were smaller, more precise, and they were spreading out like predators. Ethan and Zira ran to his old pickup. The engine groaned awake as he slammed the door, the tires kicking up dirt as they sped away the first beam of red light. Sliced through the air just behind them, Ethan swerved hard onto a narrow dirt road hidden between two rocky ridges. Zira sat tense, her hands gripping the seat like she could hold herself to the earth. She turned to him and said, "If they catch me, here they'll kill you first to make me obey." Ethan glanced at her, then back at the road, not planning on letting them catch either of us. The hum of the alien craft followed them above the ridges, shadows shifting unnaturally as the beams swept. The road dipped sharply, and Ethan cut the headlights, hoping the darkness would hide them for a moment. Zira closed her eyes, and a soft ripple of pale blue light ran across her skin. The hum of the craft faltered overhead one of them, veering off course. "What did you just do?" Ethan asked. "Using my power to disrupt their sensors," she answered, but her voice sounded weaker, every word costing her. Ethan realized she was hurting herself, just to buy them seconds of safety. The road ended. Near an old government observatory, long abandoned, its white dome barely visible against the star-filled sky. Ethan had been there once as a kid, and remembered his father saying the place had equipment powerful enough to send signals far beyond Earth. Zira's eyes flickered open when he told her. She nodded quickly. "If we can reach it, I can contact someone who might help us." Maybe Ethan didn't like the maybe, but it was better than running blind. They abandoned the truck and climbed the hill toward the observatory, the alien craft circling wider now as if they had lost the trail inside the observatory. Dust and darkness swallowed them, the air stale with years of stillness. The control panels stood silent, their glass screens cracked, but some equipment still hummed faintly. Zira moved to the largest console, her fingers brushing the controls. She whispered something in her own language, and the console lit up with symbols Ethan couldn't read. Glowing a soft white, she started, typing so fast her hands blurred. Ethan stayed near the door, listening for the sound of engines, but then the silence broke, not from outside, but from the far side of the observatory, a deep humming, different from the craft outside. It was lower, steadier, almost like something was breathing. Ethan turned slowly toward the sound and saw it, a shimmer in the air like heat rising off asphalt, but brighter, twisting and bending the space around it. Zira stopped typing, her eyes going wide, a portal she breathed, but her voice was laced with fear. The shimmering grew into a tall oval of blinding light shapes moving within it, until a figure stepped through. He was tall, his body armored in silver plates that caught the light like glass. His face, sharp, angular. His eyes cold and burning with the same faint blue as Zira's. Ethan took a step back. His hand inching toward the revolver, the figure's voice rolled through the room, deep and certain. "You have something that belongs to me, human." Ethan felt Zira move behind him, her voice low and trembling. Ethan kept his eyes on the armored figure who stepped closer. Each movement, slow, deliberate like a predator, closing in. Rax's gaze shifted to Zira, his mouth curling into a faint smile. "Your escape was impressive little key, but it ends here." The word key made Ethan's skin crawl. Rax turned his attention back to Ethan, offering a tone that almost sounded polite. "Give her to me now, and you will live. Refuse, and you will die in ways your kind." has no word for the light of the portal, pulsed brighter shadows stretching along the walls. The hum of the alien craft outside grew closer again. Ethan's grip tightened on the revolver, his mind racing between fight, run, or surrender. But before he could decide, Zira whispered something in his ear. 3 words that made his pulse spike: "Don't trust him." The silver-armored figure stood perfectly still, yet the weight of his presence pressed into the room like an invisible storm. Rax's gaze never left Zira, his voice smooth but carrying the coldness of metal. "I am here to return you to safety, child of the Empire." The way he said safety made Ethan's stomach knot. Zira stayed behind him, her small frame tense, her hands gripping the back of his jacket. Ethan took a step forward, his voice low but steady. "She's not going anywhere with you." Rax tilted his head just slightly, the faintest sign of amusement in his expression. His eyes flicked to Ethan like he was examining a curious insect. "You are braver than most humans, but bravery without understanding is suicide. She is the key. Without her, the galaxy's order collapses. Without her, worlds will burn by chaos. Not by my hand. I am offering you a gift, your people's survival." In exchange for her, Ethan didn't believe a word. He could hear the calculated rhythm in Rax's tone, the way he built his sentences to sound noble and reasonable. Zira leaned closer, whispering so only Ethan could hear. "He's lying. The weapon is under his control. Not the galaxy's. He wants me because I'm the only one who can start it." Rax took another step forward, the portal's light stretching his shadow across the dusty floor. "You have until the ships outside breach this building to decide." Ethan, the sound of engines outside grew louder, the alien craft circling lower. The faint whine of their weapons charging Zira's breathing quickened her voice, sharp. "Ethan, he will kill you if you hand me over. He'll kill you if you don't." Rax's lips curved into a slow, deliberate smile. "I see she has told you enough to make you fear me. Good fear is the beginning of wisdom." He extended one gloved hand toward Ethan, palm up. "I can give you more than this dying world ever will. Wealth, safety, freedom from every law that binds you, and all it costs is this creature's life." Ethan's jaw tightened. He thought of the crater, the way Zira had collapsed, the way she had asked him to hide her. In that moment, he knew he couldn't hand her over no matter what Rax promised. Instead of answering, he moved toward the main control panel, his hand brushing against the revolver hidden in his jacket. Rax's eyes narrowed slightly, a faint shimmer of irritation breaking through his. "Calm the engines outside," roared closer shadows flickering through the broken windows. Zira whispered, "If he takes me, the weapon will awaken, and no world will be safe." Ethan glanced at her, then without hesitation pulled the revolver and aimed at the console, not at Rax. One shot rang out the blast, echoing through the observatory. The control panel erupted in sparks. The glow of the portal flickered violently. Rax's head snapped toward it, his voice low, dangerous. "You think destroying one link will sever the chain." The portal's light thinned, distorting like stretched glass before collapsing inward with a thunderclap that shook the walls. Rax stood in the fading glow, his eyes locked on Ethan. "Now you have made yourself part of this war, human." His voice was quieter but heavier, carrying a promise more than a threat without another word. He stepped back into the thinning shimmer of the portal just before it vanished entirely. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise. Had Zira sank onto the floor, her hands trembling. She looked at Ethan with something between relief and guilt. "You just made an enemy of the most dangerous man in the galaxy." Ethan crouched beside her, offering a faint half-smile. "I think that happened when I didn't give you up." Outside, the whine of engines began to fade, the ships pulling away for now, but Ethan knew it wouldn't last. Zira told him the Empire would regroup and send more, not just drones, but hunters. Creatures trained to track across worlds and never stop. He asked how long they had before that happened. She closed her eyes, calculating quietly. Maybe hours, maybe less. Ethan helped her up the weight of what had just happened, pressing into both of them as they left the observatory. The night air felt sharper, colder. Every star above them suddenly seemed like an eye watching. They returned to the truck, moving quickly, Ethan's mind already turning to where they could hide. Next, Zira stayed silent until they were halfway down. The Ridge then said something that made the air inside the cab feel heavier. If we want to survive, we need to find the weapon before he does. The road stretched empty ahead, but Ethan drove like every shadow might hide a hunter. The desert wind clawed at the truck, carrying with it the faint metallic tang that seemed to follow Zira everywhere she sat in the passenger seat, her gaze fixed. On the sky, where faint silver shapes shimmered far above, too far for detail, but close enough to feel their watch. She finally spoke, her voice low, almost reluctant. "The weapon isn't what you think." Ethan kept his eyes on the road. "What is it then?" Zira turned her head toward him, her glowing eyes catching the dashboard light. "It can destroy worlds. Yes, but that's not all. It can heal them too." She explained in halting words that the weapon was older than the empire built by a civilization that no longer existed. It could burn a planet into ash or restore one to life and beauty. It had been meant as a safeguard, a way to keep balance, but the empire had taken it, twisted its purpose. Now they wanted her to use it for fear and control. Ethan didn't say anything for a long moment. The thought of that kind of power in anyone's hands was enough to turn his stomach. They drove until the lights of a small coastal town appeared in the distance. Ethan pulled off the road, parking. Behind an abandoned warehouse, they could not risk motels or public places. Zira seemed weaker, her skin dimmer than before. Every time she had used her power, it had cost her something. Ethan remembered her saying, if she used too much, she'd die. And the way her hands shook now told him that line was getting closer. They slipped inside the warehouse, the smell of salt water drifting through the cracked windows. Ethan checked the doors and windows, then unrolled an old sleeping bag for Zira. But before she could rest, the faint whir of a drone reached his ears. He moved to the window, peering out, just in time to see a black van pull up, two figures, stepping out, both human but dressed in matte black armor, carrying rifles marked with an unfamiliar insignia. Zira's eyes widened. Government, not empire. They've been watching too. Ethan realized they had only been hiding from one enemy when another had been waiting for their chance. The two armored figures moved fast, one at the front. Door one circling to the back, Ethan grabbed Zira's hand, pulling her toward a rusted side door. But before they could reach it, the front crashed open, and the taller of the two stepped inside. His rifle raised voice-sharp federal agents. "Drop your weapon." Ethan froze, his free hand still hovering near the revolver he kept in his jacket. The agent's eyes flicked to Zira. Recognition flashing there, secure the subject. The second agent moved to block the back exit, trapping them. Zira's breathing turned ragged. Ethan knew she couldn't fight right now, and he wasn't about to start a gunfight. They were taken to the van, hands bound, Zira leaning heavily against him. The ride was silent except for the low hum of the engine. After an hour, they stopped at a concrete bunker near the coast, led inside through dimly lit halls lined with security cameras. An older man in a gray suit waited, his expression calm, almost curious. "Mr. Cole, you've gotten yourself involved in something far beyond. He said without introducing himself. You've been protecting a highly dangerous asset, one that foreign entities are willing to kill for." He glanced at Zira, then back to Ethan. "Here's the problem. We intend to trade her for something far more valuable, advanced technology that could change our country's future." Ethan stared at him, incredulous. "You're going to hand her over to the people who'll use her to wipe out worlds?" The man's voice didn't waver. "Sometimes you make sacrifices for the greater good." Ethan's pulse hammered. He glanced at Zira, whose head was bowed, her voice a whisper, barely audible. "Please don't let them take me." The man signaled to the guards to move her, but before they could, the room's lights flickered. then died, plunging everything into darkness. A soft static crackled in Ethan's ear. From nowhere, a voice, not the man's, but quick, urgent, "If you want to live, move now." A faint glow appeared by the side wall, a door sliding open. Ethan didn't question. He grabbed Zyra and ran into the narrow passage, the door sealing behind them. The glow revealed a thin figure wearing a visor and carrying a small handheld device. The stranger's voice was steady. "I'm the one who's been jamming the Empire's trackers. My name's Cade, and I'm from her world too. We don't have time for trust talks right now. They'll be after us from both sides." They followed Cade through twisting tunnels until the air turned damp, the passage ending at a grated platform, overlooking dark water far below. Cade pointed down. "The weapon you're looking for is under the Pacific, hidden. Before the Empire ever set foot here, if Rax finds it first, Earth is done." Ethan glanced at Zyra. She was pale, but her eyes were locked. On Cade, with a spark of determination, they climbed down into the waiting submersible, its engines thrumming to life as they sank into the cold, black depths of the ocean. Above them, the faint shadow of a massive ship began to follow. The submersible sank deeper into the black waters, the faint light from the surface vanishing until there was only the cold glow of its own instruments. The hum of the engine was steady, but under it, Ethan could hear Zyra's uneven breathing. She sat across from him, her eyes closed. Conserving what little strength she had, Cade piloted in silence, his visor reflecting the dim screens ahead outside the viewing port. Strange shapes drifted in the deep, slow, and massive shadows moving in the dark. Some turned slightly, as if watching them. Ethan tried not to look too long, the pressure of the depth pressing into his chest. Cade finally spoke over the quiet. "It's close. The weapon isn't just a machine. It's alive in a way. It senses intention. That's why only she can use it." Zyra's voice was faint. "And if I choose not to, it will stay asleep." Cade nodded, but his tone was grim. "If Rax forces you, the weapon won't care about your choice. He'll twist it to his will." The submersible angled downward, and the darkness broke, a faint glow spreading across the ocean floor. Massive alien structures came into view, towering spires curling like stone frozen mid-movement. A central dome pulsed with slow light veins of energy running out from it in every direction. The sight stole Ethan's breath. It didn't look built so much as grown. The submersible settled onto a platform, and the hatch opened, letting in the heavy saltwater scent of the deep as they stepped onto the alien floor. Zyra swayed, and Ethan caught her. She steadied herself, her eyes locked on the dome. She whispered, "It's been waiting for me before they could move." A low vibration rippled through the water above. A shadow spread across the glow. Cade looked up, his voice sharp. "We're out of time." A massive alien warship descended its hull, bristling with energy cannons, and at its center, a silver-armored figure. Rax, his voice carried through some unseen channel, his words filling the chamber. "Zyra, activate the weapon now, and I will spare this world refuse, and I will burn it." The glow from the dome brightened like it was reacting to his presence. Zyra stepped forward, her feet slow but certain. Ethan grabbed her arm. "You don't have to do this." But she looked at him. "With steady eyes, I do." But not the way he thinks. She placed her hands on the dome, the surface rippling under her touch. Light surged through the veins faster, the ground trembling. Rax's voice turned sharp, commanding, "Do it!" Zyra closed her eyes, and the light shifted from cold white to a deep, warm gold. The tremors grew stronger, a rush of energy sweeping outward in every direction. Ethan felt it like sunlight breaking through a storm. The alien spires lit one by one, the glow racing out, into the ocean, and then into the sky above. Miles away, Rax's ship shuddered. Its cannons dying, its engines faltering, the glow spread beyond Earth, touching distant stars, planets scarred by war beginning to heal. Rax roared, his anger echoing through the deep. But his ship was powerless. Cade's eyes widened. He realized she's not destroying. She's restoring. Zira's voice was soft, but carried through the space. Mercy is stronger than fear. The weapon's energy reached a final pulse, and then faded. Leaving the ocean floor quiet again, Zira stepped back, her knees giving out. Ethan caught her, holding her against him. Rax's ship began to rise, retreating into the black of space, his voice carrying one last promise. This is not over, human. Ethan watched the shadow vanish before looking back at Zira. She was pale, her glow dimmed, almost gone, but she was smiling faintly for the first time since he'd met her. You didn't see me as a weapon, she whispered. You saw me as me. Ethan held her closer. You're not a weapon, Zira. You're the reason the galaxy still has a chance. Cade approached, his voice quieter than before. Rax will regroup, but you've lit a fire across the stars. Worlds will rise against him now, and you two will never be safe. Ethan met his gaze. We'll manage together. They returned to the submersible, leaving the silent alien city behind as they rose toward the surface. Ethan looked at the endless water above, knowing the war was far from over, but also knowing they had won something greater than survival. Zira rested her head against his shoulder, her eyes closing as the submersible broke into the light of day, the sky above impossibly wide, the stars beyond it waiting.